Can you tell that I'm tired? So if you see on your screen, this is a beautiful, beautiful Google Sheets item. Here is every gig in Cyberpunk 2077, organized by the district that they're in. Isn't it beautiful? It's incredible to see it like this. And I came up with some themes that I think are kind of the most important and have the most overlap in Cyberpunk 2077. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be using the PowerPix website to just take a gander at them. I've played through the game a lot of times, but I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. And then we're going to mark everything that applies to these specific quests. And what that should do, but eventually in these other tabs, what I should have is the ability to map out which gigs in Cyberpunk 2077 kind of have the most overlap, so that when we do play Cyberpunk 2077 again, we can really cut to the heart of the lore and the narrative storytelling and be sort of like less distracted. The times where we took a moment to have really deep conversations about what was going on in Cyberpunk 2077, I really loved them. I know that some of you really loved them, and I want to do more than that. So yeah, we're going to try to do a narrative thematic led play of Cyberpunk 2077. If you had gigs off the top of your head on themes, it'd be mildly concerning. I will say that Cyberpunk is obviously one of the hyperfixations closest to my heart at this time in my life. So I don't remember the names of everything, but I will be able to be like, oh, there was that quest with the kids in the soccer academy, and that dealt with human trafficking. It also dealt with cybernetic enhancement. A lot of this stuff already lives in my brain. I just need to get it out in front of me so that I can then have better streams and interactions with y'all. Maybe we can discover new stuff together. I'm hoping that I can make maybe graphs and resources and figure out how to make resources or partner with someone that can, so that I can then kind of put this up to share for anyone who wants to take a deeper dive in Cyberpunk 2077. People who really love the cyberpunk genre, but maybe don't game so much or don't have the time sink for Cyberpunk 2077. Being able to watch a movie with these themes is a little bit different from playing it. Playing the game really puts you in there, and there's a lot of triggering stuff in this game. There has to be, both through the nature of the genre and for the story to have weight. I don't think that should mean that anyone can't interact with it. Here are the themes that I have decided on that I really want to track for Cyberpunk 2077. I did the thing where I got excited about something and I forgot to breathe while I was talking. Militarism, healthcare, trafficking, sex work, that word, and self-harm, technomancy.
Lilith has concealed the 10th circle from the ancestors' eyes.
The hell is this?
Got a bad feeling, V.
In technomancy, I'm considering the fusion of necromancy and cybernetics. That's a huge, huge thing in Cyberpunk 2077, and something I think it handles a lot better than a lot of other cyberpunk stories. I know a lot of people remember there is the Maelstrom quest, I can't remember the name of it, where you go and you find Lilith and she's in the freezer. It's really terrifying, but I don't think it's a spooky one-off. Arguably, you can prove that Maelstrom is successfully doing necromancy in some way. Cyber spiritualism, I would consider when the Voodoo Boys, Maman Brigitte, their interactions with Alt and the Black Wall is a continuation of their spirituality. You get into these really interesting themes. They're Haitian and they've created this new atmosphere, and so you have some of these gangs are born out of colonization, and in order to continue their spirituality, they engage with cyber spiritualism. It would also be, there are documents that you can find about different sects of Catholicism and how they feel about cybernetics. There is a side quest with monks who are forcibly given cybernetic because they believe that you shouldn't. There's also a design choice in Cyberpunk 2077 where sometimes when you see those monks on the street, you can see that they have scars from where they had their cybernetics removed. It's the bulk of what cyber spiritualism is. And then I would also posit that cyber spiritualism, I think, applies to a lot of Johnny and V's relationship, because there are moments where Johnny shouldn't be able to see something, but he does. Shouldn't be able to move you out, not in control of your body, but moving you as assistance, and he does. And I would consider a lot of Johnny and V's connection to be cyber spiritualism as well. Love the heck out of the Zen quest. Yeah, I really loved the Zen quests. To me, that's more evidence that the game wants you to kind of explore the unreality and the spiritual aspect of it. And if you complete all the Zen quests, I guess this is a light spoiler, but if you complete all the Zen quests and you make it to your ending, there's this sort of thing that I don't know his name, Zen Daddy or whoever is wearing, and it can end up on your wall at the end. AI, pretty self-explanatory. Social collapse, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. Anything in the cyberpunk genre is gonna have social collapse. This is one that, like, I think technically I could select social collapse for every single quest in Cyberpunk 2077, but I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to do it for the quests that engage with that collapse, what it means, how it changes people's like motivation, stuff like that. Isolation is a huge one. People being forcibly isolated, people feeling like they have no choice but to be isolated, dealing with things with Bugbear, dealing with, what's her name, Sandra. She ends up really isolating herself if you follow up on some secondary quests. And that would transform over with like isolation and militarism because she's being tracked by those people. And then I have two categories for cybernetics. Cybernetics personal, the choice to have cybernetics or to not have cybernetics. Cybernetics coercion, for example, those monks who have those kind of like forcibly installed. Death. There's some death in this game, I think you might find. Corporate control and government control. I imagine we'll be clicking both of these on quite a lot of these quests, part of the dark future and the cyberpunk dystopia. These two things are in bed with each other a lot, and these two things butt heads a lot. Nusa coming up against Arasaka. Fluid reality. This is one of my favorite things in Cyberpunk 2077. Again, a lot of Johnny and V's relationship. What is or isn't actually happening is, you know, because Johnny's in your head and in your mind and he's taking over your body, but sometimes you see him and sometimes he sees you. Fluid reality would also apply if you've ever done any of those like Zen quests. I think that's fluid reality. Undefined psychosis. Sometimes people are, you know, they're losing their mind, and it might be called cyberpsychosis, but it's unclear. Find people experiencing symptoms that could be cyberpsychosis or just a breakdown. It's outside of the official like cyberpsychosis quests that Regina gives you. So I have undefined psychosis. Cynicism versus idealism. See, like V and Johnny really kind of have that deal. So much of Johnny is both of these things fighting with each other. I think it's something that Judy really struggles with. Judy particularly seems to kind of ricochet between the both of them. I think that Misty and Vic are really interesting. Vic represents a very grounded sort of technical grit view of the world, and Misty obviously represents a very spiritual, very idealistic. And then for those of you who were here when I played through the tower ending at chat's request, because it's nothing I would ever do on my own, there's some interesting stuff with Misty there for that. Surveillance state and police state are again ones that are probably going to hold hands quite a lot, that sometimes do happen separately for each other, because sometimes someone's establishing a surveillance state and they're working against the police state, and then sometimes arguably both things are happening but not together. I would say that the Paralla's quests really play into that, and anything with Mr. Blue Eyes really plays into the surveillance state, and we don't know really his whole deal. There are theories, but yeah. Mad science, basically any time research or cybernetics in Cyberpunk 2077 starts to feel like Bioshock, that's what I would consider mad science, if that makes sense to you. Outsiders, we obviously deal with that a lot with the nomads, but arguably you can deal with that with every gang and every in-group. There's a different sense of being an outsider. If you live in Dogtown, it's a very different thing to have a nomad V versus like a Corpo V. And what does it mean for the Corpo V? You kind of start the game and you immediately get shunned. Like, what does that kind of thing mean? Sometimes you just find a little weirdo in the desert. So I wanted to mark a space for outsiders. Bread and circuses, for those of you who aren't like familiar with what that term means, let's say, okay. Really good example of what bread and circuses mean. Basically, the entire Hunger Games series is just about bread and circuses. The idea is that people will sort of not care what their government or what a police state or what an authoritarian regime is doing to them as long as they have bread and circuses. And then also people will start not fighting for their rights, but just fighting to maintain access to bread and circuses. So like some Hunger Games type shit. The parade, exactly, yeah. The Arasaka, the way that Arasaka handles that death of Saburo is very much bread and circuses. Just the sheer amount of advertisements that you experience in Night City is bread and circuses. Another theme we're going to be looking at is individualism versus collectivism, and that is again something like there's a difference between a corporate V and then like Nomad and Street Kid Vs tend to have a little bit more of a sense of community. Individualism versus collectivism, you can make the argument that some of Evelyn's choices and kind of ricochet between both. Individualism versus collectivism is also like, you'll kind of see that come up just from Arasaka sibling to Arasaka sibling. Sometimes they have disagreements on that. And then I have the secondary market, the black market, which will include scavengers, but will also include things like some of the cyberpsychosis things. You can read documents and find out that they were trying to get medications that they were no longer prescribed to through like a third party. So that would be secondary market, black market, but also healthcare and also militarism. The black wall, but I also decided to say the alternate. There is, I think, within the net in Cyberpunk 2077 and also arguably in the lore of the TTRPGs, sometimes you're not beyond the black wall, but you do kind of find yourself in a liminal space or an inexplicable space. Love the concept. Yeah, it's just one of my favorite little things. If I click on these, will I die? FBI, open up! This is not complete, but you can kind of see. So these are the ands, these are the ors. So here are the ands. So far, this is just Watson. Corporate control and government control. We have Demons of War and Lieutenant Mauer. Swerk and trafficking, Dirty Biz and Monster Hunt. Healthcare and trafficking, Hippocratic Oath. Healthcare and secondary market, black market, backs against the wall, Hippocratic Oath. Militarism and healthcare, back against the wall, Demons of War. Cybernetics personal and cybernetics coercion, Bloody Ritual, Lieutenant Mauer, Bloody Ritual, technomancy and cyber spiritualism. And yeah, so this is the ands, and there's also a section for ors, corporate control or government control. As you can see, we've already got a lot in there. I was really glad. I thought I was gonna have to organize this part all by myself, and then Site was like, can you make me a list of the ands that you want and the ors that you want? And I did. And so yeah. Wow. There's a possibility. There's a possibility. I think if I make it through Westbrook in this next little bit, we might start this guided cyberpunk like lore theme play. We might actually still be able to start it in July.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
You can go to my Ko-fi page or my Ko-fi page or whatever. I'm doing a really big project. It got pushed back because I got COVID and it was bad. I'm examining specifically to this whole project SWORK, SW, work in modern cyberpunk stories. Obviously that includes Cyberpunk 2077, but it also includes other things. A couple episodes of Black Mirror, Love, Death, and Robots, a lot of Blade Runner stuff in there. Obviously, I'm looking at the Cyberpunk 2077 one-off story. No coincidence, which I hate, but I'm still looking at it. So yes, thank you so much for being here and for hanging out with me.
On behalf of the staff of the Independent California Motel, I wish you all sweet dreams.